In a culture that tells us we can choose motherhood or, good counsel knows we're meant for motherhood and. Hi, I'm Samantha Elbertson. I work on behalf of the maternity home Good Counsel. We have 4 homes in New York and New Jersey where motherhood is rescued, preserved, and celebrated every day. Welcome to our podcast, Motherhood and, where we spend time talking with women living out their vocation of motherhood and their roles in the community. We speak to pro-life activists, contributors to Catholic culture, entrepreneurs, great legal minds, gentle, humble hearts, those who work on behalf of women in need, breaking cycles of poverty, abuse, and homelessness, and mothers working every day to form and nourish a new generation. This is Motherhood and. Hi, with me today on Motherhood and is Jessica Warner. Jessica is on the communications and marketing team at Heartbeat International, where she utilizes her political and legal background to further the mission, which is to reach and rescue as many lives as possible through an effective global network of life-affirming pregnancy help that renews communities for life. While Heartbeat International is active globally, their headquarters is located in Ohio. Since the overturn of Roe and Dobbs, the ground-level battles have begun. Hi, Jessica. Thank you for spending some time with me today. Can you tell me a little bit about your background and your current role at Heartbeat International before we get into what is happening in Ohio?
Yes, of course. It's such a pleasure to be on your podcast. I'm so grateful to be one of your first guests. It's so exciting to see such a wonderful organization getting in on the podcast game. So we're excited to be a part of this.
All about working together, bridging that gap, making sure women know everything all that's at their disposal to help them.
Yeah. So a little bit about what I do. As you kind of mentioned, I work in the communications and marketing department. My official title is marketing specialist. So I do a little bit of everything. My background actually, before I came to Heartbeat International, was I worked as a lobbyist for Ohio Right to Life here in Ohio. And so when I was transitioning out of politics, I've been doing that as well as working in the Senate and running a campaign before that. So I had a little bit of political background and the pro-life movement coming in to Heartbeat International. So I get to use that from time to time, kind of like what I'm going to be doing today, talking about what's happening in Ohio and the ballot initiative issue that's going to be really impacting the whole of the pro-life movement kind of across the nation. So we are moving forward in this post-Roe world and what that looks like today. So I get to do some of that, use some of my political background when obviously the legislatures and government decide that they want to take aim at pregnancy help programs and organizations. And so I get to step in there and also I get to just advance the work of pregnancy help and promote that, whether it be locally or nationally, and help just communicate their good work. So it's been an exciting transition to Heartbeat, and I am excited to be here.
Thank you so much for spending time with us. I know you guys are very busy in Ohio. Do you want to tell us a little bit about what happened with issue number 1 and what you're working on now leading up to the election?
Absolutely. So what's going on right now is obviously we have a constitutional amendment on our ballot for November. So we've seen similar ballot initiatives like this in California, Vermont, and Michigan, but this is going to be slightly different. And this is something obviously unique because they're trying it in a purple to red kind of state, a life state, if you will. We're kind of talking about that as life and abortion states these days when we're looking at the divide post-Roe and how this is breaking down in the individual fights in each state. And what's unique about them coming to Ohio is obviously that this is typically considered a life state and has a legislature that is predominantly pro-life and has passed several pro-life initiatives such as the heartbeat bill or the dismemberment ban and things along those lines. So these are legislatures that would not pass something removing restrictions on abortions. So what they've done and what the abortion movement has done is they've tried to go around the state legislature by using Ohio's constitutional amendment process. And so they have created basically a very overly broad amendment that basically just talks about reproductive freedom and this broad overarching terms about letting women decide, and we'll limit it at viability, except for we'll give exceptions for life or health of the mother. And as we know, unfortunately, as much as that sounds like it maybe is restricting abortion to viability or some of those things, in practice, what would happen is that this would mean that abortion is available up and through the 9th month of pregnancy, because health of the mother, as we've seen in many other states, has been interpreted to mean mental health, physical health, emotional health, financial health, even sometimes. So basically, it's not that you can get an abortionist to say, oh no, she needs this because, and basically any reason, fill in the blank, works. And so as much as they're trying to say this is not an extreme abortion allowance in Ohio, clearly it is and in effect. And we'll see that if that would ever be to pass. And so right now, Ohioans are obviously rallying to try to stop this amendment. And what we're trying to do is educate the pregnancy help movement on why this is important and what their role in this process is. So that's kind of what we've put together, some different one-pagers and some web pages to kind of help educate on what's going on here and why those in other states should really be paying attention as well.
Right. And while you're talking, I'm going to put on the screen some visuals of your website, heartbeatinternational.org. And then there's a page, heartbeatinternational.org/GOTV, which stands for Get Out the Vote. On this page, you'll find action steps, state amendments, and opposition strategy. I'll also put the links to these pages in the description of this podcast. So it's a purple to red state, meaning it's more conservative leaning, meaning it's predominantly pro-life. Why would they be starting there? Is it kind of a gauge, a temperature to kind of see where they can get a foothold? Or
Ohio's ballot amendment or ballot initiative process is actually one of the easier ones. It not all states allow for constitutional amendments to be brought by citizens. So this is called a citizen-initiated ballot initiative. And so that means they can go to the citizens to collect signatures, and if they get a certain number of signatures, and they can put this constitutional amendment on the ballot. Some other states don't allow for that. Some states, it's just via the state legislature. They have to bring those amendments before they're voted on the ballot. But this is something that's brought on by citizens. So that makes it a little bit easier. And it's also a gauge. Ohio is still very much a battleground state in some ways. And they're kind of testing out what language works. They kind of did that in Michigan, obviously less life-friendly in Michigan, unfortunately, but they're using some of those same tactics now in Ohio. And it's really that kind of overall confusion campaign. Let's talk about this in super broad terms. And so it sounds like you're voting against freedom. It sounds like you're voting against choice and all of those euphemisms versus the real reality of this extreme stance on abortion, of allowing abortion with no restrictions in Ohio. So that's what we're really fighting against, is to allow people to actually understand what this amendment does, because they're really bringing a lot of confusion into it on purpose.
If you can't win on merit,
yes,
right? Just confuse everyone. And with respect to Ohio and how it will affect the other states, what do you see as the biggest effort before November that you are launching, you are active in Ohio to kind of counteract any of these manipulations and these confusing tactics? And then what is it that we can do in other states to support you and also be wary of what's coming next?
Yeah. And on this page that we created, there's a tab called State Amendments, and there we have a list of what this ballot initiative is, and then a little bit more information too on the other groups that are actively working against this. So Protect Women Ohio is the coalition in Ohio that's come together to fight this ballot initiative. And they have some great talking points that we link to, and some other information that we link to there. Our goal, obviously, as part of the pregnancy help movement, is to try to help the pregnancy help movement here in Ohio know how to get involved. Because I know that as nonprofits, sometimes it can be really confusing about what is and is not allowed when
Mm,
it comes to getting involved in the political activities. And a lot of times, nonprofits prefer to sit back because they don't want to get in trouble with the IRS or other kinds of things for their tax exempt status.
mhm.
And I understand that fear. The great news is that with ballot initiatives, there's a lot less rules. It's not like a candidate that's running. Nonprofits are very much allowed to express their stances on ballot initiatives, and in fact, are encouraged to do so. It's really important that, especially when this is something impacting you and the work that you're doing, that you're able to speak up. So that is one thing. We have some different steps, action steps that pregnancy centers and maternity homes and the like can take, listed there, along with just some legal guidance on what that looks like. But what the IRS states is that a 501(c)(3) may participate in political activities as long as they constitute an insubstantial part of the overall expenditures. Now, insubstantial, while it is not directly defined, it is generally considered to be 5 to 15% of a 501(c)(3)'s funds. So that's kind of the general guidelines that those who work with 501(c)(3)s have provided. And that's your overall, like everything that you guys do. So
Okay. Yeah.
really, that opens the door for a lot of activity
Sure.
there. But some really basic ideas and concepts for those in Ohio that we're really encouraging is make sure you and others are registered to vote. You
Mhm.
would be shocked. I think we hear a lot of people talking these days, especially talking to churches and other 501(c)(3s. They're like, oh, everyone's registered to vote, everyone votes. That's just simply not the case. I think we think that happens with most people because maybe we're the ones that are politically involved, but we can't make that assumption that everyone around us is registered to vote.
Mm.
So that's a really easy one, is encouraging those to register to vote. That is not something that's going to eat into that 5 to 15%. That is just
Right.
general
Oh.
good, citizen participation. Making sure your voting deadlines in Ohio.
Mhm.
We have 28 days of early voting. So early voting
Wow.
in Ohio starts very early. And so you have to make sure when people are voting. People are going to be starting voting here really soon. And then also making sure you're connected with other pregnancy help groups. We encourage those to be involved with your pregnancy help coalition that's in your state. And if there isn't one, to work on creating one. I know in Ohio, we have a great coalition of pregnancy help organizations that are working on this initiative as well. So they've formed recently, and it's been a really great connecting way. I think so many times as 501(c)(3s and nonprofits in this work, sometimes it can be isolating. Sometimes we don't know what we don't know. And so it's helpful to have those other groups to link arms with, to kind of go, what are you doing? How are you getting involved? What are ideas to kind of feel that community? Because as we're being attacked, we need to have that fellowship in that community with other groups that are like minded.
Absolutely. And we
Yeah,
all have different strengths and different
exactly.
roles. And we need to, instead of becoming experts in everything or reinventing the wheel so often, we need to lean on each other. So that's incredibly important. If you could make a political forecast, what would you say is most likely to happen in Ohio from what you're seeing as of today? And then what the next step might be for abortion legislation?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be really tight. Earlier this summer, we had another ballot initiative with a special election in August, actually. And that was
Mhm.
kind of a precursor to this. Not to get too in the weeds of the Ohio politics, but it was an attempt to make the process of amending the Constitution in Ohio just a little bit harder. Because it's really, as I said, it's really easy to change the Constitution in Ohio. We have a lot of legislation that isn't super popular in the legislature that gets around the legislature by just going to the Constitution. And that means in Ohio, we have a lot of not great legislation shoved into our Constitution because it's just 50% plus one is the threshold for that vote. A lot of other states, as I said, either don't allow citizen initiated ballot initiatives, or they're like a 60% of the vote plus one, versus Ohio's just slim majority. So that was an attempt. It unfortunately lost by quite a bit. And so we're definitely having an uphill battle here. And unfortunately, because Ohio, I think, has been passing pro-life legislation for such a long time, the opposition is really fired up. And I think the pro-life community assumes that because we live in a pro-life state, that's going to continue happening. So right now, we're really fighting to make sure that the pro-life movement is engaged and is activated, and doesn't sit back because they think that we're just going to win because we have been winning in the past. That's unfortunately a risk. So I think, unfortunately, it's going to be very, very tight. I don't know if I can make a call one way or the other. I'm really hoping that we win, but we really need to make sure that we don't just sit back, because this is what they're doing to target. They're using this strategy, and they're pouring tens of millions of dollars into this because they know they have a chance. And so looking forward, let's say this ballot initiative doesn't pass, which would be amazing. There's going to be a lot of court cases actually that'll come down, that'll officially decide whether or not, say, the heartbeat bill can go into effect in Ohio. Likely they'll move forward in trying to consider other life protections in Ohio legislatively, which they've been waiting on until we find the result of this election, and whether or not, because right now, if we passed other bans in Ohio, but this measure passed as well, it wouldn't quite be effective. So they're kind of been putting a hold and putting really all their effort behind defeating this initiative before they work on other pieces of legislation regulating abortion or outlawing abortion. Unfortunately, if this passes, we're going to have to see what the courts do. Likely a lot of we do have a more conservative Supreme Court in Ohio, but they have to abide by what the law is at the exact same time. And so it's likely to see a lot of the pro-life protections that are put into law in Ohio would probably be removed as it moves forward and as those court cases unwind. A lot of them would not be enforced anymore and have to go through the court process. And because Ohio is a battleground state, I would imagine in a few years this being kind of a battle of the ballot initiatives, that a constitutional amendment would be proposed possibly to remove this. But the hard part is that this is, again, tens of millions of dollars on each side of this battle. And so it's a very expensive process that people can't afford to just do year after year. It's a very long process of gathering those things. So we'll see what ends up happening, but it won't be over. This will be an ongoing process for sure. It'll just put lives at risk, obviously, as we move forward with this.
And then do you see a trajectory after this as a plan for abortion legislation?
Yeah. So I don't know if they'll be able to pass like abortion enshrining legislation in Ohio. There's still going to be a very conservative legislature. They'll probably try to find other ways of doing it. But with a amendment that broad, it would be very difficult. But moving forward, I know that the pro-abortion movement is looking at Ohio, looking at their messaging, looking at what they're doing, and moving to other states. We're already seeing ballot initiatives proposed for other states, both life states and abortion states. Already on the ballot for 2024 is Maryland and New York. They both have Maryland's Right to Reproductive Freedom Amendment and New York's Equal Protection of Law Amendment. So they're both very similar pieces of legislation. Or very similar amendments, I should say, but also proposed that we're still yet to see whether or not they actually get on the ballot. We have states like Florida, Arizona, and South Dakota, and Pennsylvania. So this is a very mixed bags of states. This is not all life states or abortion states, whatever state they believe that they can get basically an end run around the legislature, or just further enshrining it into their constitution, abortion into their constitution. This is something that's moving forward. And so that's why, again, we're talking about this issue, is it's not just about Ohio. It's
Right.
about the fate of many future states. This is how they're choosing to move forward in this battle, state by state. And if they find success here, even minimally, this is the tactic they're going to learn from and move forward with. And so it's important that those in other states to pay attention to what is going on in their state and communicate about this. We don't want you guys to be caught unawares of this tactic. If we can prepare now, if we can start educating our neighbors, our supporters, our donors, the women who are in our centers, all of these things, the better off we will be to counteract these lies.
Absolutely. There's a lot of times when I've gone in for various elections and there's issues on the ballot that I wasn't 100% about. And either I left it blank or I voted in the way that, when you read it, you try to understand it to the best of your ability. And I hope that you're not making a horrible mistake, but these
Yeah.
are written in a way to be quite deceptive on
Yeah.
purpose, assuming that
Yeah.
people aren't as well versed about issues as they are about candidates, and
Yeah.
that they're getting just the I don't know vote, essentially.
Exactly.
So
And
it's important for us to keep talking about this. It's important for us to educate everyone in every state what these initiatives are called and the language that's being used so we can recognize it immediately.
absolutely. There's a reason why lawyers who are very intelligent write these amendments,
Right.
and it's specifically to win as many people as possible, despite what you may think it means. And so, when
Hmm.
you're using, again, reproductive freedom and general thing, that sounds very appealing, again, to the most people, and that's why they're writing it that way. For example, in Ohio, one of the part amendment states every individual has a right to make and carry out one's own reproductive decisions. They're using the term like individual really intentionally so that it can apply to
Mm.
minors. This is removing a
Wow.
lot of the restrictions on parental rights. That's how intricately and broadly they
Hmm.
know they can write these things, because they want as much leeway as humanly possible, as broad as an interpretation as humanly possible, to be able to remove even the most like most basic of provisions, like parental notification laws.
Right. Right. Yeah. Reproductive freedom to dismember
Hmm.
a body and not tell your
Exactly.
parents.
Exactly.
That's
And
so
yeah,
horrific.
it's so horrific, and it's so just so sad that this
Mhm.
is something so insidiously written in that way. Their ambiguity of their statements really attempt to obscure the truth. And what we're just doing is trying to let people know what the truth is. And yeah, just make sure you're talking about this. I know it can be uncomfortable at times, but that's what we do. We get into the hard
Right.
conversations. We have these hard conversations with women regularly. Let's make sure that they're not lied to more. Let's make sure that we are telling them the truth. And I know that's what your listeners are doing, but we just need to make sure that I know it's tempting to say politics are politics, and that's not the world I work in. And I get that. And I get that it's scary to get into this, but we know the truth. We see the actual effects of abortion every day on women. And
Absolutely.
people, if you're working in a maternity home, or, if you're supporting, people are looking to you as the authority in this topic. You have supporters, you have donors, you have those who are looking to you to say what's going on, and they are looking to you for that, and you have the ability to be the expert in this area. I think
Right.
sometimes we think we don't, maybe we're not the best people to speak up on this, but you are. You have the experience and you have the expertise to be able to tell them how this is actually going to impact women. That this
Right.
isn't going to help women. This is going to hurt women and cost the lives of millions of unborn children.
And at Good Counsel, we've helped thousands of women who have wanted to keep their babies, have wanted
Mhm.
against all odds, against being told they shouldn't, they couldn't, and kicked out of their homes because they wouldn't. They want to keep their babies, and yet they're the same women that are targeted and told you have no other choice. And to discount their stories is
Mm.
it's an incredible injustice.
Exactly. Exactly. And what we're communicating and what we have to offer is true empowerment, is true choice. What the other side has to offer is not empowering to these women. It's not saying that they're capable. It's saying you're not capable. And it's not actually offering real solutions. Maternity homes offer real solutions to these women. It offers true healing and true restoration versus, as I've said many times, abortion is just a dirty Band-Aid on an open wound.
Mm,
It covers it up. Maybe I don't want to see the abusive relationship that you're in. I don't want to see the poverty or whatever. So I'll just give you an abortion because this pregnancy is bringing it to the surface. An abortion will just, you'll go back to the abusive relationship. You go back to poverty. You won't be bothering me anymore. I want to see it. But then that wound just festers. It doesn't heal. It doesn't fix this problem. But when we're able to offer life and real options and real solutions, and as you guys do in your homes, allowing women to come in and teaching them life skills and giving them a place to live and offering that restoration and healing, that does fix that problem. That's
right.
real empowerment there.
When we look at the work that we do and every mother that comes in, she's not just a mother and a child.
Mm,
Often she has other children. Um, Often she is disconnected somehow from her family, but through her own healing can reconnect with her family, and they all as a unit can heal. But most important to understand is we're lifting a generation,
yeah,
future, all of her future generations out of that poverty, out of homelessness, out of abusive relationships, these cycles that we're breaking.
absolutely.
Its impact is exponential, and is often dismissed as just you care about birth only. It's just one child who would have been unhappy, or or it's a child with a disability and therefore has no value. But there's an
Mm,
entire trajectory of that child's life, an entire trajectory of the mother's life, who we're saying you have no value, you have no story, and by dismissing this huge role that she's about to play.
absolutely.
Um,
I think of so at Heartbeat we do this program called Babies Go to Congress, where
yes.
we bring centers or maternity homes and their clients to the legislature, to the Congress people, and we get to meet with them and tell the stories of these centers and tell the specific stories of this mama and her baby, or maybe her multiple children, whatever the story may be. It's a wonderful time. We love doing it. It's just a cool time because we obviously are kind of in the background sometimes supporting centers. And so to be able to be in those rooms telling those stories is such a cool opportunity. And meeting the babies and the moms who've been impacted is great. But this past year, we were able to bring a maternity home with us that was from Virginia. And it was really incredible because a lot of their legislators that were in their area weren't necessarily conservative or pro life. And so, not typically friendly to our message. But and I'm talking about this because I think it's so important that we tell these stories, even when we don't think maybe that those people are necessarily that receptive to our stories. Because
Correct.
this center, or sorry, this maternity home was able to share their story and the story of this mom who had actually lived in the center for 5 years and been able to be helped. And when they were talking about the housing services that they provided, this aide of this legislator or this congressperson was not being very, not really listening, kind of, just going about his day, taking notes, another 15-minute meeting. They talked about this topic of housing and his ears perked up and he was just like asking a lot more questions and really getting engaged. And I think when we tell the actual stories of the clients that we serve and these women that we serve and the situations that they come from and their inspiring stories about how we actually were able to provide real change and real help in their lives, we don't understand the impact that that has sometimes to those who are not in this movement every single day. We may think that this is kind of a normal everyday story, but this is such an incredible story that these things are really miracles that we're being able to be a part of. And it can reach and soften hearts that we don't know that it can reach and soften every day, that may not be warm or open to the typical pro-life message, but because of the stories that we have in our arsenal, like they are going to perk up and go, wait, you guys are actually doing XYZ. You actually are helping moms and serving them and empowering them. It's just I want to encourage people that these stories, that your stories mean and make a huge difference.
Absolutely. We so often in legal battles, which you know well, in politics, we forget who we're fighting for. And
Mm,
we in the nitty-gritty of it, we lose sight of our common ground. And it gets particularly uh, aggressive over abortion and pro-life issues. But when you come together in a maternity home, it's a woman who is experiencing homelessness, a woman who's experiencing abuse, a woman who's experiencing poverty, and she's pregnant. How do we help her? And on the pro-life side, we say, okay, we need to lift up, rescue, preserve, celebrate her life and that of her unborn child. We need to make sure that we lift her out of this cycle she's in, lift her up to her God-given dignity, and hold her hand along the way as long as she needs it. And in turn, we've seen that they come back around and help others, which is just the beautiful cycle, a fulfillment of our work.
absolutely.
But then on another side, if you are more liberal leaning, if you are a Democrat, you are looking at poverty and homelessness and pregnancy as a problem and you want to help solve it and you care about the woman and you're saying, listen, you're hurting. I want to stop the hurt. How do I
Mm,
stop the hurt quickly and effectively? Well, let's get rid of this pregnancy so you don't have that issue anymore. Let's get rid of this need for working. So we will give you money from the state. We will put it, there's X, Y, and Z that they do that, like you said, are more like dirty band-aids instead of actually empowering women. They are
absolutely.
they are telling women, you can't do this on your own. The state will
Hmm.
help you and it will always help you until the day you die because you're not strong enough. As
Yeah.
opposed to what we believe, which is women can take it and stop telling them they can't.
Yeah.
One of the reasons we started this podcast and called it Motherhood and is because we're sick and tired of hearing you can be a mother or you have to give up your
Mm,
career, you have to give up your schooling, travel, relationships, have to take a back burner because the kid. Motherhood is a fulfillment. It is a higher calling, a vocation, and a lifting up of oneself, and a magnification of all the little areas in which a woman has impact in her world and how powerful she is. So
absolutely.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
hard to get that message across because I believe, so I can only speak on
Mm,
behalf of myself, but I believe it's a faith issue. I believe that
mm,
in the pro-life movement, you have more people acknowledging God in their lives and acknowledging that we are working to his glory and to that end and not for our own glory. And I think there is a lack of faith, not a total lack of faith. I know there are many
yeah.
Christians, even Catholics, who feel a certain way, are aligned more in democratic principles. But I believe they're aligned in democratic principles because they think they should be helping the poor and the homeless and the, so it's just educating. It's about
Yeah.
educating and it's about those moments like you're talking about this. Babies go to Congress. It's so cool to see the women that are being impacted and to see it firsthand. There's nothing like it and there's no disputing it. So I mean
Yeah. When you
that's
say,
real change moments right there.
yeah. When they say this is my story, you can't say, no, that's not your
No, that's
story. You're
not
like,
your
no,
story.
this is what I've been through. This is where I've come from. Yeah. And we have some great links to some stories that have been shared throughout the years. If you're wanting some edification and some encouragement of the work that's being done by the pregnancy help movement as a whole, it's really incredible. these very strong women that you're just like, yes, you're doing it. We had a woman who had been in prostitution before she found herself pregnant and came to a pregnancy help center, who was able to perform a ultrasound. She was planning on getting a chemical abortion that Monday, and it was a Friday night. They stayed 2 hours late to be able to help her. And they ended up helping her get her degree. She had tapped out of all federal funds. She had no more federal funding available to her to be able to get her degree. And they actually helped pay for her degree to finish her degree. And she was like at Babies Go to Congress, like just praising the Lord for what he has done, redeeming her life. And just incredible to see the trajectory she's on now, and how those relationships really impacted her. And it's really about, how do we actually impact these women? How, maybe we all want to, end poverty and help these women that are in need, and, give them a chance to get out of maybe an abusive relationship or get into a home or things along those lines. What are we doing that's actually empowering her and helping her? And
Right.
obviously, I'm grateful for those organizations like Democrats for Life and things along those lines. That we can hopefully eventually see this as a nonpartisan issue, that hopefully eventually that this becomes a thing that we can all agree that abortion is not helpful for women, not helpful for families, that this is not the solution, that we have so many better solutions to empower these women. And we're just so grateful, obviously, for the work that the whole pregnancy help movement does, that maternity homes play a critical role for women in very vulnerable situations, and just the work of good counsel and what you guys are doing is just, it's a wonderful feeling to be able to support you guys and what you're doing and come alongside of you in any way we can. That's why I love being able to work at Heartbeat International. It's just such a blessing.
Going to take all of us.
Mm.
It's going to take all of us. A big safety net for women, for mothers
Mhm.
in need. And so you gave a couple of resources.
Yeah.
I'm going to have the Heartbeat International website in
Mhm.
our description on YouTube. I'll also be posting these resources on our Facebook and on our Instagram at Good Counsel Homes. So there's the Heartbeat International website, which is heartbeatinternational.org. Is that correct?
That is correct. Heartbeatinternational.org. You can
Awesome.
also find us on all the social medias if you would
Mhm.
like. So we post a lot of educational content. I know a little while ago we were doing some educational content on maternity housing
Mhm.
because that had come under fire a little bit. We were making sure that people knew what maternity housing was and
Right.
was not. It's super important. We answer a lot of questions about what pregnancy help is across the board. So yeah, please visit our website. We have obviously our Get Out the Vote page that has more
I'll share
information
that
on
too. Yeah.
on what you guys can do as 501(c)(3)s or as
Mhm.
just, you know, uh,
Individuals.
as individuals, as
Yeah.
you promote the work of pregnancy help and hopefully fight against predatory amendments like this in your states.
And pray.
Yeah,
And pray
absolutely.
together.
Number one.
Number one, absolutely.
Number two, vote.
Absolutely. Number two. That's great. That's great. So, Jessica, thank you so much for being with us. Thank you for educating me and I'm sure our listeners about what's going on in Ohio and what is coming down the pike. And this is not an unknown. This isn't unexpected. I would imagine you'd agree that once Roe and Dobbs, once those were overturned and that these issues were brought to the states, that our battleground would be the states. But I think that in the pro-life movement, what we do best is our grassroots effort and changing hearts and minds one heartbeat at a time. Oh, that was corny.
I love it.
um, Changing one heart at a time.
Thank you so much for having us on your podcast. We love good counsel and what you guys are doing through this podcast of motherhood. And we just love that message that empowers women, that they don't have to choose between their life and motherhood, that motherhood isn't the end. It's a continuation of who they are. And it's an adding on to that. So thank you so much. And just for getting the word out about what's going on in Ohio and these ballot initiatives initiatives throughout the nation. We think that this is such an important message, and we appreciate you guys taking the time to talk about this.
Thank you so much for chatting with us. Thank you for spending time with me, and it's been a pleasure. You take care.
Take care.
If a woman is pregnant, she shouldn't have to worry about how she's going to carry, deliver, and care for her child. She can call Good Counsel. We need you to help spread the good news that Good Counsel's doors are open for all women pregnant and parenting and in need. Please join us and be an advocate for motherhood. Subscribe to our podcast, Motherhood and, on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Please be sure to visit Good Counsel's website for more information and to get involved at goodcounselhomes.org. We ask that you share our maternity help website, help.goodcounselhomes.org. Please share this website with others often so that it will reach more women in need. Subscribe to Good Counsel's YouTube channel for more inspiring and edifying content about maternity homes, the pro-life movement, and the life and ministry of Good Counsel's founder, Father Benedict Groeschel. And be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Good Counsel Homes. If you have any questions or ideas for future guests or topics, please message us on Facebook or Instagram. Remember, life is love. Talk to you soon.